So
Okay, now you can hear me.
We're just about to go live on Facebook.
Okay.
So we'll mute you, and then I will introduce you.
Okay.
So you can mute and unmute by just hovering over her right here.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much to those of you who've joined us throughout the day. We have really been enjoying these sessions, getting to know one another, and it's all about friendship and connection, isn't it, in the end? So before I start to speak with the amazing Margret, who is a dear friend and colleague in this field, I'd like to just give a quick overview of iEARN, and for those of you who just joined us who don't really know what iEARN is, it's repetition. I used to be a teacher, so repetition, repetition, repetition. And I'm Tonya, by the way. I'm iEARN-USA's executive director, and really proud of the team here today, giving you hour by hour information about who we are in the field of global collaborative project-based learning and virtual exchange. So I'm going to do a quick PowerPoint overview of where we are. So we are going to, again, be looking at a really brief overview. I want to make sure everybody can see those slides. Great. Okay. Let me go here to the next. Just a quick check-in. Thumbs up on the slides? Great, okay. Just making sure that everybody can see them. And we are at Passport to iEARN, and here we go. So for those of you who aren't aware of what Giving Tuesday is, it's really a response to a lot of what's been going on with Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Giving Tuesday is really a way to look at a response to consumerism as a way to give back through deeds, through actions, through in-kind, and also connect with others, volunteer, any way that you can give back to society. We'd like to think that we do it every day in large and small ways at iEARN, but I think today's a special day to focus on that in global philanthropy, which is just really cool to be reminded in a spirit of reflection. So we are going to bring up these slides. Okay, here we are. So we are focusing on Giving Tuesday, as I said, as a day of global giving, volunteerism, and kindness. And the ways we do that are really up to us. But at iEARN, we'd like to think that we're really looking at how we can serve our community better through in-kind and financial support. So today we're going to be looking at, we're having different profiles, and we're going to be talking to Margret in just a moment. She is a longstanding board member, volunteer, educator, global education maven. She's also be doing a presentation later. So Margret, thanks so much, and I'll again be introducing you more formally in a moment. I'd like to look at our team in total and also a little bit about me, because I have the honored position of serving this organization for almost 2 years as its executive director. A little bit about me. Again, my name is Tonya Muro. I'm a mother of 7-year-old twin girls. Pictured below, Abby and Penny in our iEARN offices. Some of you are coming to our open house later, and you can see our offices in person. Unfortunately, you won't see the girls in person, but you can see them there in the picture. I am an educator. I received my doctorate in international education development across the street at Teachers College. In fact, my iEARN story begins more than almost 20 years ago when Lisa Jobson, an amazing friend and advisory board member and former staff member, introduced iEARN to our classroom. And I was like, oh my goodness, I would love to be part of iEARN one day. And here we are, all these years later, and here I am serving across the street when I had a dream of being part of iEARN more formally. So really amazing when you think about all the ways we can touch each other's lives. I also am on my own path towards global citizenship and how I see my place in the world. I've traveled over 30 countries, most recently to visit with our friends in iEARN Taiwan. And again, I'm the executive director here. And I hope that I'm an optimist, and I also call myself a hope-timist. And my favorite quote is to let your vision be world-embracing rather than confined to your own selves. So large and small ways, how do we broaden our worldview, whether that's the next block, the next town, the next country? It's really looking at how to step outside ourselves to try to be of service to others through more actions than words, hopefully. And last year, we ran a 5K charity run to think about Giving Tuesday. And so it's really cool to be thinking about different ways we can support Giving Tuesday every year. For those of you who've joined in earlier, this will be very brief. iEARN's story began in 1988. The founder, Peter Koppen, had a dream of linking up schools in New York State with schools in Moscow, and it was highly successful. It led to where we are today. In 2017, we've connected to more than 140 countries, over 30 languages, over 50,000 educators, and over 2 million youth are engaged in some sort of collaborative online project-based learning experience. And we are almost at 30 years of service, and more exciting news about that before I introduce Margret. Our mission and vision is that we look to help to create through our work an interconnected, peaceful, and just world. And our mission is to empower educators, young people, and their communities through global collaboration and transformative learning. This is our value proposition. What if every student, regardless of age or geography, could have a meaningful international exchange experience as part of their education? And we saw a video earlier about this. We've had different case studies, different projects that we've looked at. But iEARN really is a bold statement. We really believe that iEARN can expand access and equity so that every student can be part of this experience. We look to our network. We are a network of educators and students. We are part of this global citizenship network. These are some of the country logos for our partners, and we each operate independently, but also collaboratively. So we're highly decentralized. I serve the US network along with our board members in the US, but then each country has its own whether governing council or country coordinator. So you can see some of the partners that we work with, but again, many others than this. We have hundreds of teacher designed and facilitated projects. This is the project guide from last year. It looks to be an infographic, so you can see a snapshot of some of the work we've done. We're primarily asynchronous. That means that teachers and students can work on these projects in their own time. But then we also connect sometimes live like this, and also through video conferences and virtual exchanges. We really seek to look at how we can improve the quality of life on the planet in each of our projects. Something that's really important is that iEARN is teacher-led, teacher-designed, and teacher-facilitated. We are the guides on the side and the back seat. We provide professional development so that teachers can learn how to engage, but then they create the projects, which I think is so important because having been a former teacher, we want to feel empowered to really create things that will be meaningful for us in our classroom, and also hopefully to be able to connect with others. I think it's really important, all of the beautiful programs out there, the plug and play programs, there's not enough to be said about that. But I think when teachers can feel empowered to their own self-determination to say, wow, I want to look at a project that relates to how am I going to combat global poverty and hunger, and I'm going to work on a project such as ending hunger through the kids project, for example, that we looked at earlier. But that's so amazing that the teacher can then have sustainability looking at these goals. So just to review that, there are some ways you can support us today by watching this, by thinking about iEARN, how you could become part of our community. You could go to Facebook and make a gift of any amount. I believe the Gates Foundation match, we're we believe that the gift may or may not be matched at this point in the day, but it's still incredibly important, and that'll help us making these meaningful connections around the world. Earlier, our friend Dina, our deputy director, talked about the fact that iEARN is turning 30. So next year in 2018, we are celebrating our International Conference and Youth Summit in Virginia, and we'd love for you to join us. More details on that on our website. Again, making a gift, you can also donate through our website, us.iern.org, donate. Double the love for global ed, making an impact. We are just really excited that you've joined us today in creating a more interconnected, peaceful, and just world. This is one of my other favorite quotes before I introduce Margret formally. There's some ways to get connected with us in addition to what I've already stated, that from Martin Luther King Jr., our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. And I truly believe with a passion that iEARN looks at things that matter. People matter, teachers matter, students matter, the wider community matters, and that we try to make an impact through our daily actions. So now I'd like to introduce Margret. Margret Riel is one of our board members, and we're so happy she could join us. There's some photos that I found, Margret. One of you at an iEARN conference, and then another of you at a talk. I'm not going to read through her entire bio. She recently retired, though, as director for learning technologies at Pepperdine University. She has her doctorate in PhD in social sciences from the University of California at Irvine. She began her career as a researcher in the Interactive Technology Lab at the University of California, San Diego. She's been serving through iEARN through many, many years. She actually looked at iEARN in the first year of its existence, so she's been involved for decades. She's also been the past chair of the Action Research Special Interest Group at AERA. I mean, there's too many accolades, Margret. I know you're a very humble, giving person, and there's so much I could say about you. I'm just thrilled that you could join us today. So now I'm going to go to Margret and chat. Okay, so Margret, year of its existence, so she's been involved for decades. Oh. She's also been the past chair.
We're all on a computer. Okay. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Oh, so now you're muted. Got to get us both unmuted. Well, I'm happy to talk to you while she figures out how to unmute. There you go. No? You're still muted. Can you hear me?
Hey, Margret, I'm back. I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Yes.
But somehow you're an echo, so hold on one moment, please.
Gotta get us both unmuted.
Let's see. The great thing is we still have
time to while she figures out how to unmute. There you go. No?
Let's see. Still learning the connection between Facebook Live and Zoom muted. Room. So hold on.
Can you hear me?
Hey, Margret, I'm back. I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Yes.
But somehow you're an echo, so hold on one moment, please.
It's both unmuted.
Let's see.
The recording is playing.
So why are we
We're hearing the recording. There you go. Oh.
Let's see. Still learning the connection between Facebook Live and Zoom Room. So hold on. Hey, Margret, I'm back. I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. Yes.
But somehow you're an echo, so hold on one moment, please.
Sorry.
I unmuted the other speaker.
The recording is playing. We're hearing the recording. There you go. Oh.
Let's see. Still learning the connection between Facebook Live and Zoom Room. So hold on. Hey, Margret, I'm back. I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. Yes.
Now it's us. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that feedback loop of muting and unmuting.
Okay.
Thanks for your patience. We got to have comic relief and keep it real, right? So.
Yep.
Okay, yep. Margret, good late morning to you, or still, morning. Margret's out in California. Thank you so much. She's been with us since early morning. We really appreciate it. And got some questions for you because it's not often that I get to engage with you one-on-one, especially in this forum. And I bet many of our viewers are probably wondering, what's the connection also between the board and iEARN-USA? Because we have some of our partner countries on who've asked, what's the relationship? So I'm going to look through these questions and just thank you again for joining us. We're just really thrilled and honored. Do you want to add anything to your introduction before I ask you questions?
No, I'm, you did a great job of introducing me. My heart is with iEARN and has been since iEARN was first founded. I was working on another network prior to the founding of iEARN, but we were all very excited to see its development. And as I worked kind of in sister networks in the beginning, and then, at some point, we developed the AT&T Learning Network. And when it was clear that things were going to be on the internet, they graciously gave their products to iEARN and actually gave iEARN a grant to help move the learning circles over to iEARN.
And that was in the...
That was 95.
1995. Great. So you've started answering my first question about how you started with iEARN-USA, but how otherwise did you get connected? Was it through this grant? And then what has inspired you to remain involved with iEARN-USA all these years?
Well, in the beginning, we actually did a project across networks. There were 5 major networks, and we did a project called Planet, People Linking Across Networks. And we had Kids of the World preserve a piece of the rainforest. And that was when we were all working very closely together. And so when I came over to iEARN, I moved Learning Circles over to that platform and continued to be very active. For the first probably 8 years, I ran the Learning Circles, and then Barry took over from me since I had a teaching position at UCI and then later at Pepperdine. And it left me less time to do Learning Circles. And it was such an important activity that I wanted it to be done well. But I've always stayed connected. And then in the last, I think maybe 4 years, I've joined the board and provide advice and guidance in terms of the leadership of iEARN.
Thank you so much. And Margret mentioned Learning Circle. She'll be speaking more about that later with our Director of Education and also with a fellow board member, Barry Kramer, who's also an esteemed educator. He will be speaking about his involvement as a project facilitator of Learning Circles a bit later. Margret, what do you see as iEARN-USA's major strengths or assets as you now have this position as a board member?
Well, iEARN is engaged in many different projects and initiatives, but the heart of all of them is to bring the students of the world together in a global community with the goals of world peace, security, and human rights for all. Perhaps the second goal is to engage the hearts and minds of the global community to care for and heal Mother Earth. So those are the 2 kinds of focal points that have been there since the beginning, to join with the people of the world and to worry about the environment that we live in, both social and physical, so that the students of the world can feel some sense of power in their work in solving the world problems. We all like to think that we can make a difference. And what iEARN does is help very young students be able to do something that is productive that they can point to. So I mentioned the rainforest, giving kids of the nice symbolism of that, giving kids of the world working together to preserve the rainforest in various regions was an example of the kind of thing that kids can really feel that they did do something that they can be proud of.
You really touched my heartstrings when you said healing Mother Earth. Feels especially, it's always felt important, but it feels even more important right now.
It is more important right now.
More urgent need as we see, even near your own home community, the wildfires in Santa Rosa, like you think about, how many lives have been impacted even in this country by the that we aren't caring enough for Mother Earth. So thank you for pointing that out. And in fact, a number of the iEARN projects look at how we can, in our small actions, really look at how to care for the planet. Because again, it's caring for the planet and its peoples for our common, not only survival, but we want to thrive as human beings, not just survive. So
yeah, and we have the large things that we see that are wrong, but just at Thanksgiving time, I looked around the yard and things that should be in bloom were not in bloom. Plant cycles have all been disrupted. They're not doing their normal, I've lived in the same house now for 38 years, and you don't really notice small things because it's incremental, but at an event like Thanksgiving where you collect the different flowers so you pay attention to what's in the yard, I was really surprised at how many things that should have been blooming weren't blooming. And I can only think about all of the problems that we're ignoring in the world's atmosphere that are having these subtle effects as well as these huge effects that you pointed out.
I mean, it's a small example, but I have mosquitoes in my home, and it's going to be December on Friday. I've never had mosquitoes at this time of year. It's going to be almost 60 degrees tomorrow in New York City. It's fascinating. I just, what you're saying is I can totally relate in my own way.
Yeah, we had 82. The Thanksgiving was 82 degrees. That's the hottest we've ever had. We didn't have to worry about wind. Usually tablecloths blow off the tables. No wind. Nice hot sun.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm sure we could speak on about that for hours. So when you how do you describe iEARN-USA to people who've never heard of it? And what do you say briefly? Like, what is your own kind of elevator pitch?
Yeah, well, I do that frequently. And what I tell people is iEARN is a global organization that's very similar to the United Nations. It has a focus on education and service. But as you were talking about in the beginning, countries each have their own independent organizations. So we're talking today about iEARN-USA, but there's iEARN Pakistan, there's iEARN Japan, iEARN, almost every country has their own little, not little, but an organization that spans their educational system. But all of these different organizations come together to create a common spirit that's very similar to that of the UN, with the agenda to avoid the scourge of war, as they say, to reaffirm human rights, to celebrate the equality of people, and to establish justice and respect for our collective work. And that's to create a social and environmental progress. So we do this by helping the students to practice tolerance, to develop understandings around the issues that divide nations, and then through dialogue and understanding and mutual respect, we forge projects that empower the students of the world to make real change in their communities and in the world communities. And those are really lofty goals, but in every project, we address some of those goals. When we connect kids in South Africa with kids in South America, with kids in Norway, and get them all to think about what it means to deal with the diversity that's in each of their communities, we get really interesting dialogue and really interesting examples that open up our myopic eyes. I mean, we're all very myopic, but we don't recognize it. And it's only when someone shows us a completely different view that we can realize how limited our own view is.
It's so true in our place in the world. So
yes.
Absolutely true. I have another follow-up question. Why do you think more people in the United States after 30 years of existence, why haven't more heard about iEARN-USA? What do you think? Because it's such to me, being an insider and an outsider, because I haven't always been involved, it's such an amazing organization, especially for teachers. When I was a teacher, I hadn't heard of it. What do you think could help more people hear about it? Things like this?
Well, we definitely need more funding. to do a wider campaign. It has been a kind of organization that grows by word of mouth. Mm-hmm. And so you see pockets of real, it'll come to a school and then schools around that area will become very involved. But it's not doing a really good nationwide reach. Partly, even though lots of the funding comes from the U.S. government, it's not a government, we don't have a government mandated program on global education. We probably should, but we don't. We haven't really developed in our curriculum a strong value of global education. And so places where it's developed, iEARN is very well known. Places that are still yet to understand how important it is to have kids grow with the understanding that comes from learning with kids, not about kids, but with kids around the world. That understanding is so much more powerful, and we need the work of funders. And I hope that today on Giving Tuesday that we will reach people who recognize that that this separate nationalistic approach that our country has suddenly shifted to is one that creates divisions in the world. It divides us into nations instead of joining us. And really, we're on this planet together. In science, we often talk about the planet as a spaceship. And you can't have people inside. It's a big spaceship hurling through space. And just like smaller, if we think of it in that small way, everybody on the planet has to work together in order for it to function well. And when anyone doesn't, it causes reverberations to everybody.
Thank you. That was really, really powerful. I think you kind of answered my next question. What do you think are the most compelling reasons for supporting iEARN-USA from an individual donor's perspective? I mean, the people that have donated today, thank you so much for your contributions. It's meant the world to us. I think we have some brand new donors actually today as a result of this. But what do you think? There's like so many important causes to give to. I've given to others today besides iEARN myself. But what do you think are some important reasons that an individual donor would feel like their dollar is going somewhere?
Well, what's nice about an organization like this that's grassroots and decentralized is that there's no there's no money collecting at the top. The money is all distributed. We keep salaries uncomfortably low for all of the people who work so hard. It's because they're giving too. It is a service organization, but we can't do it without funding. So that's where you come in. We really need donors to help make sure that the resources that we need to connect the kids, to support the teachers, to the professional developers to come into schools to help teachers understand how you work with kids in other schools. How do you deal with conflict when it arises? How do you create the kind of dialogue that develops respect and trust with people who look different and speak a different language? Those kinds of skills are so important to our world community, and they will only happen if adults are taking their role of training them, of helping people develop them. And this is an organization that does an amazing job. It does an amazing job at empowering people at all levels. I mean, from the kids up to all the leaders of the organization, all the leaders at every country. They're all working together. I think something that's really telling about the organization is in the very beginning, 30 years ago, the coordinators from the countries got together to have a meeting. So they had a conference, and all the coordinators from all the different countries came, and they had a discussion about, all the work that it does to make this organization effective. But then they looked around and said, where are the teachers? This organization is run by teachers. It's not run by us. We need to have a conference where the teachers are there. So the next year they had a conference, and the coordinators came and the teachers came, and the teachers all shared the projects that they were doing and all the work that the students were doing. But the teachers looked around and said, you know, this is all about what the students are doing. And there weren't any students here. So the next year there was a student, what do we call it?
Was the Youth Summit.
The Youth Summit that occurs at the same time as the conference, that occurs at the same time as the organizational, what do we call the UN, when the UN nations get together.
Oh, the General Assembly?
The General Assembly. So the General Assembly, thank you. The General Assembly, the Teachers Conference, and the Youth Summit all occur at the same time, with overlapping sessions and lots of dialogue back and forth. And the conference itself is a perfect example of the kind of organization that this is.
Thank you. That's so well put. So that's a great segue to my next thought. As iEARN approaches its 30th anniversary, can you reflect on some of the major milestones of the last 3 decades? I know that that's probably not easy to state in a few words, but you've already alluded to some of them with the conferences, but where have we landed on some of the other things that have been of service to others?
Well, I think in iEARN you have effective project development. So in many efforts to use telecommunication in education, you have people who have tried to start networks or start activities, and they last a few years, but then they end. So what you have here is an attention to sustainability over time, sustainability and growth over time. And I think that the multi-nation decentralized approach is what has led to the success of the network. Because if one country has trouble, that country needs support from other countries, and they can then support them. But even if that for a while, if that group for a while is quiet or not working, there are all these other groups that can fill in until that country gets back on its feet. So it's not dependent upon any single country for its success. It is the consortium of all of the countries that make it successful. And that, I think that approach is a really effective way of doing global education. We've had, at the time that we were starting networks, there must have been maybe 8 or 9 networks, and I can only think of 2 that are still in operation. And iEARN is the most vibrant of them. So, and we have more that have started since then, and I don't see that as competition. I see that as the more people who are helping us think in terms of global education and environmental science and climate change, the more that we are enlisting the minds of the young people to actually be a part with us, be partners with us in solving the world's problems, the better we're going to do. I mean, I think of, I guess the most recent example is a teacher that I'm working with, an iEARN teacher that I'm working with in Peru. And when they had the floods and all of that mud, just flooded the town, such that cows were coming out completely caked in mud. Even people were raising up out of the mud and walking to help. You saw this destruction of the water source that was so critical to them. Well, the kids immediately were challenged to...
Margaret, hold on. We lost the feed. Hold on.
Okay.
I'm just gonna have to connect one more time. Apologize.
And we're back. Technology is imperfect, but we try our best. Margaret, you were in the middle of speaking about iEARN's accomplishments, about your action research with the... And we're back. And now we're in the feedback loop again. So sorry. Margaret, hold on. In the middle of speaking about iEARN's accomplishments, about your action research with the... And we're back. And now we're in the feedback loop again. So sorry. We have an amazing technology specialist here. I'm really grateful for her, or otherwise we would be in that feedback loop. We'd be in the matrix of constant feedback. So Margret, if you could please continue with your thought about your work in Peru with, I think his name is Carlos.
Carlos, too.
Yeah, and about the work you've done with him, because I think we got cut off.
Okay, so I was just saying when the muds flooded and the water was polluted, he gave his students the challenge of how do you take everyday objects, household tools that you have, and find a way to purify water. And that took them on a worldwide search through all sorts of different scientific channels to have his students help learn how to solve a problem that was immediate for their community. And the students were able to create devices that could purify the water, in that immediate situation so that people had drinking water. And that sense of, I can do something. I'm not a victim. I'm a problem solver. Mm. I can think through, I can use science. I can use what I know and what I believe in and what I care about to solve the problems that my community faces. That kind of empowerment is just amazing. And he also had the kids preserving the cave drawings from current day graffiti. And once kids actually find out how hard it is to take graffiti off of walls and preserve the beauty of what has been left in the past, they realize that defacing things is really a serious crime, and they're less likely to do it when they understand how much work it takes people to preserve what is valuable to the community.
Speaking of which, the wonderful backdrop behind me we've been using for our Facebook Live, this was student created. It's we have a couple of them hanging around the office. So for those of you who are coming to our open house today, you'll get to see these. They're really paying homage to the Native American, First Nations, First Peoples, Indigenous communities through designs of what wall hangings might look like, or tapestries. So it's so important when we think about when we think about the Native peoples of the world and such contributions and profound contributions. I mean, there's so much to learn, right? That I think we're at the very beginning of what we're going to be learning from Native American communities. So I really appreciate when you talked about what was happening in Peru, because that's a case study of what we could be learning here. So thank you so much for that. Do you want to add anything else about the accomplishments? Because I have just a couple more questions.
Okay, there's one more story that I just really like. When students were doing indigenous art, and they discovered that some of the students that they were dealing with slept in huts without walls and didn't have blankets, and particularly the students so the U.S. focused students in the U.S. On a reservation in New Mexico, who were Zunis, and they were a very poor community, and the teacher was a little concerned because the students wanted to raise money to send blankets to these students on the highlands of Thailand. And the teacher went to the elders to see what he should do about this, and the elders said, if you teach our students to help others, you teach them to be Zuni. And so what the kids did, and it was very clever, and again, it's the way in which iEARN teachers end up thinking about how to use culture, education, service learning embodied in their choice. So they could have just said, well, let's collect money. But they didn't. They said, take a blanket that you really care about, a blanket that is meaningful in your culture, and draw a picture of it on this card. And they bought cardstock, folded it in half, made greeting cards. The kids made the envelopes. So then you have a geometric problem. How do you make an envelope out of a piece of paper? So they had a little bit of math, a little bit of art, a little bit of culture. They sold those cards for $1 a piece. Each kid made one. There were 400 kids in the school. They made $400, which was enough to buy a generator that gave the kids not only blankets, but electricity in their very primitive school. And they inspired students in other places and the parents in their community who did a jazzercise. So these things skyrocket. They were just sharing art, but in the sharing of the art, they understood a need, and in understanding a need, they figured out what they could do to address that need. And then other people, seeing that a group was really solving the problem, got into the process, and in the end, they solved the problem in an amazingly effective way. So walls on the side of the places where the kids sleep, blankets, and a generator so that they had electricity.
What an amazing story. I had not heard that story. Thank you so much for sharing that. I also wanted to share, jumping off that theme, that our wonderful country partner in Australia, one of the teachers there, is going to be actually creating a quilt for our 30th anniversary. And partner countries are all going to be sending, the iEARN partner countries in our network are going to be sending a sample of what it might look like in, the US will be interesting to see what we come up with for our patch for the quilt. But she's going to put all of these together and create a worldwide quilt that will be displayed for our 30th anniversary. So I was thinking about just what that's going to mean for each country and their contribution. I'm so excited to see it. I think it's going to be absolutely amazing. So that's just another.
Have you seen the quilt from the past? I don't know.
I think I've seen pictures.
Yeah.
I saw some amazing things that have been created over the years for our milestone anniversaries. Speaking of which, for those of you who come to the open house today, we have an iEARN timeline, a gallery walk of significant milestones in our history, 30 years, and about the conferences, about some of the things Margret spoke of. It's really cool. It's an interactive timeline where you can just read and see pictures of various things that have happened, and we will keep it up for a while. And when Margret comes with the other board members, we have an in-person meeting. In fact, we have 7 other amazing board members who didn't get to be on this Fireside Chat, but they come from all walks of life and all kinds of experiences and have really added amazing contributions to iEARN. So I want to thank them. They're not involved today, but their support is invaluable, and they've contributed in many ways. So I'm not going to name all the names. You can go to our website if you want to learn more about them. So the last question for Margret is, how would you, as an educator, board member, volunteer, you help advise on learning circles, you're in so many aspects of iEARN, how would you like to see us grow as we turn 30?
Well, I guess I would like to see us poised and ready to listen, learn, and lead from our colleagues from around the world, so that we can forge new directions in peace and prosperity. Our world does not need to be one of nation bullies, each trying to get the better of the other. Instead, we need to help the next generations of leaders learn that what's good for all of us is good for the planet. So, as I said, we are a relatively small unit. We can't survive if we start warring with one another. That tears us apart. What we need is ways of bringing us together. So from the beginning, iEARN was founded by an effort to get Soviet Union children and American students to talk to each other, with the belief that if kids grew up not seeing each other as these enemies that leaders were trying to make you believe they were, that if they saw the common humanity, that when these children grew up, they would have a more willing, open mind and a readiness to end the Cold War. And that did, in fact, happen. And we've tried to work that same kind of process with all sorts of conflicts all over the world. The more you're educated, the more you understand that other points of view are valid, and they might be different than yours, but they don't necessarily have to cancel yours. We can find a world in which we have a multicultural respect and way of living. So I would say that my vision for iEARN is to continue to help the students of the world, and it's the students in the US, yes, but it's the students of the world to learn that they have more in common with one another than divides them, that the more we work in collaboration and with respect for the cultural needs and concerns of all countries, the better able we will be, and the more richly we will live in our own skins and in our own world. The goal is not to be first or best or strongest or biggest. It is to be comfortable that your time on this earth was spent well, that you can be proud of what you did and how you both used resources and preserved resources for those that follow you, that you didn't waste them needlessly, and you didn't, but that you were also able to find joy and happiness in the kinds of relationships that you develop. Those are the things that make us rich. People who are rich are people who can have everything they want. Now you can do that by either having lots of money or making your wants consistent with the things that are important in this world. And I think iEARN helps kids understand that lots of the things that kids are commercially taught to want are not really what they want. What they want is respect and love and connections and ties, and a world where they can live a comfortable, fulfilling life, knowing that they have done good for others.
Well, I can't really top that. So I'd like to just thank you so much for your time, your service, your leadership. And I've learned a lot from you, Margret, and I look forward to continuing to learn with you and from you as a mentor and as a friend and a colleague in this field. And we look forward to hearing more about your work in action research with the Learning Circles presentation that's upcoming. But another thing that I'd like to end on, because I thought you said it so well, one of my other, I love quotes, I'm always trying to collect them, is that to let deeds, not words, be your adorning. So the more deeds we can do in the world and less words, I mean, I think it's important to speak and have dialogue, but if we can follow them up with actions, I think that that's going to be a step towards helping our planet and the people that live there, because we are really one family in the end, aren't we? So thank you so much. And
let me just, before we quit, I just want to say how happy all of us at iEARN are that we found Tonya and have her as the leader of iEARN-USA. I can't tell you how hard we looked for her, and she was exactly, I didn't know her before we found her, but she was exactly who I was looking for, and who we had discussed would be perfect to take the helm of iEARN as we move into the next generation. So we're so thrilled that she's there, and I know that you can tell from listening to her how committed and passionate she is about what she does. The leadership in iEARN is strong and powerful. That the people who work are each so committed and so dedicated at what they do. It's such a joy to work in the office, and it's just so important that they don't have to spend all of their time worrying about funding and can instead worry about doing the work of iEARN. So it's the global education that is so important, and if you can just spare just a little bit of funds from a large number of people, it will make their work so much more productive.
Margret, you made me as red as this. Thank you. I don't have any words to that. Just thank you. Thank you for your kind words. And thanks to all of you. We're going to wrap this session up. Let Margret take a water break or whatever you need before you speak again. And just thanks to all of you so much for being with us today. It means the world to us. It's been so inspiring for our staff to be part of this. And we really rely on also the strength of our partnerships. So we have many partners around the world and in the US, our Global Ed partners. So thank you. If you're watching any of our partners out there, we really, really appreciate your support, and we will continue to work with you to strengthen this, this network. So again, it's all about collaboration, not competition in the end. So that's what makes the flowers grow. All right, thank you. And I will see you all later. Looking forward to the open house. And if you have any questions for us, let us know. But take good care, everyone. Thanks, Margaret.
Bye.
Bye.